I'm not so sure how that would work in that context, because there's a totally different relationship with the police. I was staying with a couple, and the male who I was staying with, his brother had made a statement in the press that the police in France were racist toward immigrants. The Minister of the Interior filed a lawsuit against him for slandering the police. The Minister of the Interior at that time was Sarkozy. And I just couldn't imagine, that some minister, that the Secretary of the Interior, if I criticized the police in Detroit or something, was going to sue me in court. So they have there's a totally different arrangement, a whole different way of looking at the police. Those people who are French people see the police as their protectors, as their boys who are out keeping the country in order. But those who see themselves as the victims of the police have a different way of looking at it. And what I was trying to do was work with those people who see themselves as the victims, so that they could have some kind of power to modify the police behavior. Interestingly, while I was there, a Congolese immigrant was beaten to death in a police car in Paris while he was handcuffed. And nobody was ever charged. In America, at least there would be some kind of inquest. There would be some kind of something. But nobody was charged because the police are kind of on a pedestal. But they wanted to know, about my experiences and our experiences in America, and how we had worked for social change. And I told them there seems to be the younger generation is disenchanted with the old left, the Socialist Party, the Communist Party. Although they were members of the Communist Party, as a matter of fact, Saint-Denis has a communist administration who allowed us to use their building, by the way, for our big debates, they call it, for our big forums. But there seems to be in the younger generation kind of disenchantment with the Communist Party, the kind of generation gap, and the Socialist Party as being it's too tied into the system now, too tied into, with the bourgeois system, they call it. And they are disenchanted with them. There's also an issue with Muslim immigrants, in that there's a generation gap there, in that many of the older generation who have left Africa, Algeria, Morocco, Mali, all the French colonies, and come to Paris, they're so glad to be out of where they were and to have jobs making real money. They do not complain about anything. But the younger generation are not just satisfied, because they're not comparing how they're living with how somebody was living in Mali, because many of them have never been to Mali. They're comparing how they're living with how other French people are living. And in that comparison, they feel discriminated against. They feel like they are victims of police harassment and brutality. And I saw myself that difference. I was in I was walking with a friend, and he's who I'd met over there, and he was talking to me about France, and we sat down at a bench, and the bench was in front of what he said was a housing project, which in America looks like a middle class apartment building, what they call a housing project over in Saint-Denis. But I saw a group of, must have been 14 to 16 men. I thought it was a gang fight getting ready to take place, because these guys had on black gloves, and they had on these black uniforms, and they were walking so tough, like right through this project. And I said, "Who is it? Who's that?" And he said, "It's the police." And I said, if they walk through like a community in America like that, everybody's gonna laugh at them because they look so peculiar, because they're all walking like they're the toughest guys, like they're, getting ready to have a gunfight at OK Corral. But they walk through these communities, and he said that's to intimidate people, and they intimidate people like that. I can see if you got 14, I've never seen a group that large walk through a black community. 14 to 16 cops. I counted I think 14, but I think there was some more that I had missed. And I said, you never see groups that large of police officers walking on foot through a community. But they did that in France, in Saint-Denis, in what they call the banlieue, you know, in the suburbs. And what's interesting in France is that the poor people are in the suburbs and the wealthy people are in the city. In America, it's the opposite. The wealthy people in the suburbs and the poor people in the city. But I went into Paris, and it was very warm, and I was staying with some people, and I learned the metro system. It was very easy to learn. So I was supposed to be taking the metro back to where I was staying. But I got off the metro, and I didn't want to go in, so I just went walking around. And I walked at night till 2:30 in the morning, just looking at France, you know, looking at Paris. Very safe, very civilized, very, very beautiful city. But I remember I went to this place called Montmartre, you know, and I was with a friend then, and I didn't know how far those steps were, and wound up walking a mile up these steps. But I just remember seeing all of what was taking place up those steps toward this great cathedral, and they were drinking wine and smoking marijuana, and these were all white French kids, and they had playing little sex games on the steps, and I see there's these police officers, and they're not saying anything to them. And somebody over here is drinking wine and over smoking marijuana, and they're partying in groups and stuff, and they're just having I said, these people are free. But if they were doing this in the suburbs, they would all go to jail. They would all go to jail. And I asked a person who was with me, and he said, no, you can't do this in the suburbs. And it's just, there's two tiers in the society. And there's two tiers, and similar to the kind of discrimination that took place under segregation in America. But their way of dealing with it, you know, I don't think that they can just emulate and just carbon copy everything we did because the situation is different.
Right.
I don't think they can, but they're seeking ways.
Well, it's the 21st century, and it's all different.
It's all different, right?
Ahmad, I want to thank you for this really excellent conversation.
Well,
and,
thank you.
We covered a lot of really important topics, so I thank you a lot.
Well, sometimes you don't know what you think till you articulate
Exactly.
it, you know?
No, that's true.
Mm-hmm.